Welcome to Lucid Mains, New IAS Mains Current Affairs program. Today we are going to discuss Paris Agreement and climate change. It's an evergreen topic for UPSC Mains. Why in news? It was recently in news because of this report. Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change special report on global warming of 1.5 degrees Celsius. It was released in October 2018. So that report is important from mains perspective. Now we will discuss about Paris Agreement because the static portion which will be useful for mains. There are three major features. One is to keep global temperature rise in this century below 2 degrees Celsius compared to pre-industrial level. If pre-industrial level is the period between 1850 and 1900. Many aspirants don't know that. Please understand that. And this is our real target. 2 degrees Celsius is the real target, but our aspirational target is 1.5 degrees Celsius. This is the difference. Then next, the agreement has adaptation and resilience as the focus areas. That is to adapt to the adverse impact of climate change and also foster climate resilience by fostering a pathway of low greenhouse gas emissions. Third, Paris Agreement focus on finance flows. That also to ensure low greenhouse gas emissions and climate resilient development. Now we will get into India's INDC. INDC is intended nationally determined contribution that we have submitted. There are three major features which we must use any question related to climate change in GS paper 3 and even paper 1. The first feature is emission intensity. The INDC focuses on reducing emission intensity of its GDP by 33 to 35% by 2030 from 2005 levels. Then second is carbon sink, creation of 2.5 to 3 billion tons of CO2 equivalent through additional forest and tree cover by 2030. Billion means 100 crore, remember that. Third is non-fossil fuel based energy. 40% cumulative electric power installation, that is our target of a non-fossil fuel based energy resources by 2030. It's an ambitious target, great target compared to many other developed countries. These are the major features of our INDC. This is basics which is a categorization I evolved. This includes uncategorized points and static points, that is basic ideas. One thing is carbon dioxide, which is the main greenhouse gas, which is the major culprit and which is the major concern, which stays for 100 to 150 years. Then next point is study natural climate change, which identified India as the country with the most expected damage from rising level of carbon dioxide. The study says domestic social cost, which is $90 per ton for India, which is the highest. $90 comes around 6,500 rupees Indian rupees. Another point is methane. Methane we will discuss in later, which is 25 times more potent than CO2 as a greenhouse gas. Another point is to limit warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius of global net carbon dioxide emissions to decline by around 45% from 2010 level by 2030. 45% reduction should be there. And that should reach around net zero by mid-century. That is, the emission of greenhouse gas should be neutralized by developing renewable energy, green economy, etc. And another study points out that to limit warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius requires investing in additional $2.4 trillion annually in the energy sector between now and 2035, which comes around 175 lakh crore Indian rupees. Another point is UN Office for Disaster Risk Reduction observed that economic cost of climate related disaster was around $2.25 trillion over the last 2 decades, which is also around 164 lakh crore Indian rupees. Now we will deal out the challenges with regard to achieving Paris Agreement. The major challenge is breach of target. At the current rate, global warming will breach 1.5 degrees Celsius by 2030 or between 2030 and 2052 according to Ipcc. We should remember that 1.5 degrees Celsius is just our aspirational target, not even our real target. And then carbon removal technologies. This is cited as one of the solution towards climate change, but it is still unproven in terms of scale. Plus, there is significant risk for the sustainable use of it, according to many studies. And the continuing use of fossil fuel is another challenge. And nationally determined contributions is still not enough. It is not sufficient. Even if we fully implement those NDCs, it will anyway result in 3 to 5 degrees Celsius increase in global warming. So this is another major challenge. Then impact of climate change. There are many impacts. The major impact is the small island states and the least developed nations. They will be the worst sufferers of the climate change. Then socio-economic impact like health, then incidents of malaria, dengue, malnutrition, food security, unemployment, rise in unemployment. Then another thing is heat waves. Study in PNAS point out that 35 crore additional people could be exposed to deadly heat wave if the warming increased to 2 degrees Celsius. And air pollution. A study in nature climate change said that just rise in 1.5 degrees Celsius could prevent 15 more premature deaths due to air pollution by 2100 compared to 2 degrees Celsius scenario. Then on wealth, the world could be 3% wealthier by 2100 in a 1.5 degrees Celsius scenario compared to 2 degrees Celsius scenario. All these studies are published in Nature, and from the main perspective, you can incorporate these facts into your answer. That will add value to your answer. Even it can be selective, you don't need to study all facts, but the facts which you think will be very effective, that you can incorporate. Then extreme weather events, heavy rainfall, heat waves, then floods and droughts. Then here we need to incorporate examples like heat waves and drought in Europe, forest fire in US, the recent historical floods in Kerala, and continuing drought in Cape Town in South Africa. Then water security would be affected. Then another major impact is on coral reefs. 1.5 degrees Celsius scenario, 70 to 90% of coral reefs across the world would die. We know the recent incidents of coral bleaching in Great Barrier Reef in Australia. So the thing is, 90% of coral reefs may die even in that 1.5 degrees Celsius scenario. And even in 2 degrees Celsius scenario, almost 100% would be lost. Then impact on Arctic. Arctic temperature has already risen by 3 degrees Celsius. So it will lead to melting of ice, which will in turn affect ocean current and weather pattern. Because the distribution of ocean current and the movement of ocean current depends on the temperature of ocean water. So which will be affected by the release of water due to ice melt. Then methane emission. A vast amount of methane is stored in Arctic and Antarctic ice, that is in permafrost. As a result of melting, this will be emitted. We know, we have already studied, methane is 25 times more potent than CO2 as a greenhouse gas. So methane emission is a major concern. And another thing is ocean acidification, because emission of GHG like CO2 will lead to more CO2 in the ocean water, which will lead to acidification, which would affect the ecological diversity, marine productivity, and livelihood of coastal community. Then sea level rise. Sea level rise by average 50 centimeter by 2100 in a 2 degrees Celsius warmer world. 10 centimeter more than 1.5 degrees Celsius warming. These statistics you can incorporate, you can include in your answers. Then way forward, what are the solutions to contain this menace of climate change? One is deeper emission cuts. The current level of emission cuts is nowhere enough to achieve the aspirational target of 1.5 degrees Celsius. So deeper cuts from the big emitters like China, US, European Union, and even from India is very essential. Then development of carbon removal technologies which are pragmatic and practical is very essential. Then afforestation, which is a very basic point, but which is very must to contain climate change. India's National Action Plan on Climate Change is very relevant in this regard. Then consumption. We need to develop and evolve a sustainable and healthy consumption pattern to address climate change. For example, sustainable consumption of fossil fuel. Then development of low carbon technology innovation. Example, building and cement industry innovation around housing and new material including natural fiber composites. So innovation is very important to contain climate change. Innovative materials which will be energy efficient, resource efficient, and which will foster low carbon pathway. Such innovation should be promoted and developed. Then land management. Well managed land systems are must. For example, forest conservation in Manda Lekha village in Maharashtra. It is the first village in the country to secure community forest right. So this is one good example which you can include. Manda Lekha village. Their forest conservation method is highly appreciated and lauded. And this is cited as sustainable land management example. And another one example is the zero budget natural farming, which was started in Andhra Pradesh. Then human behavioral changes is very essential. Our lifestyle should change, which should be sustainable and sensitive to climate change. Example, walking instead of using private vehicles. Then next is the development of energy efficiency. Bureau of Energy Efficiency's appliance labeling is one good example. Our energy conservation building codes. These are ways to promote energy efficiency which will in turn can be effective to contain climate change. Then focusing on renewable energy. This is another example which you can include. In Jharkhand, around 250 remote villages powered by solar microgrids. Microgrids are localized supply of electricity. That is, the electricity is generated locally. So even if there is no grid connection or the connection from the electricity grid, we can develop our own electricity by using local sources. That is, this example we can include. Then transport sector, focus on land use planning and transit oriented development. Transit oriented development is a key term which often comes in use. It is development of residential, commercial and spaces around a public transport system such that use of private transport is minimized and walking, cycling, etc. is promoted. So it is a sustainable way of urbanization and urban development. Then manpower, increase in the municipal corporation personnel specializing in environmental engineering and disaster management. One major problem currently we face is a lack of shortage of adequate number of municipal officials which has skill to deal with the emerging climate change issues. So development of such skill set or the adequate skilled manpower is very essential. Then finance through green climate fund and other mechanisms. Then some studies suggest that we need to go beyond Paris Agreement. That is Paris Agreement plus approach. Because one thing is Paris Agreement is not binding. Second is the countries like the USA and Australia are somewhat reluctant to advance the objectives of Paris Agreement. So a Paris Agreement plus approach is cited as an alternative. That is a creation of more forums for sector specific and regional alliances on reducing emissions. Then technological innovation to reduce emissions and the need to transfer these to developing countries. For example, flue gas desulfurization. So this method will reduce the emission intensity of thermal power plants. Such innovations which can reduce emissions should be developed and these should be transferred to developing countries and least developed countries. And I have incorporated two diagrams also. These diagrams which you can use in the mains writing. Diagrams will add brownie points, so you must use. And thank you.